Okay, so here's something pretty stark. When someone takes just one puff of a cigarette, it's not just smoke in the lungs, is it?
No, not at all. Those toxic gases, they flood into the bloodstream almost instantly.
And then spread everywhere.
Pretty much. To almost every single organ in the body. It's a really profound systemic impact.
Systemic, that's the word. And the numbers are just, well, staggering.
They really are. I mean, think about this. 1 in every 5 deaths in the U.S. linked directly to smoking cigarettes.
1 in 5?
Yeah. It's not just, a bad habit. It fundamentally disrupts how our bodies are supposed to work.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're calling this the hidden toll of smoking. We've looked at some really comprehensive medical sources, detailed stuff, to really unpack the mechanisms, how smoking actually damages nearly every part of you.
Right. Moving beyond just smoking is bad for you.
Exactly. We want to get into the science, the physiology behind how it kills, understand those specific damages, the long-term stuff.
And for you listening, this is about seeing how those chemicals sort of subtly interact with your body, what it actually means for your health.
It's the how behind the what.
Yeah.
That cascade of events.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's start right at the source. A cigarette. What is actually in there that kicks this whole destructive process off?
Well, fundamentally, it's tobacco leaves, right? And they naturally contain nicotine plus a whole bunch of other compounds.
Okay.
But the absolute critical point, the game changer, is when that tobacco burns.
Combustion.
Right. That process releases literally thousands of hazardous chemicals. And get this, over 40 of them are known carcinogens.
The 40, just from burning tobacco.
40 chemicals known specifically to cause cancer, yes.
Wow. And it's not just particles, right? There are gases involved, too.
Oh, absolutely. The smoke is loaded with toxic gases, things like carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide.
Nasty stuff.
Very nasty. And here's something that might surprise people. There are even trace amounts of cancer-causing radioactive particles in tobacco smoke.
Radioactive? Seriously?
Seriously. And, the source material is very clear on this. It doesn't matter what form of tobacco you use.
Right.
Cigars, pipes, smokeless stuff like chewing tobacco, snuff. It's all dangerous. There's no safe way to use tobacco.
So it's this chemical soup, really, a toxic cloud you're inhaling. But what about the addiction? That's the hook, isn't it?
That really is the core of the problem for so many, and that's down to nicotine.
The addictive chemical?
Highly addictive. When you inhale smoke, that nicotine gets absorbed incredibly fast.
Cool. Into
the bloodstream, straight to the brain.
Super quick.
And once it hits the brain, it triggers this release of chemicals that cause a feeling of, euphoria, pleasure.
That immediate rush, the moment.
Exactly that. But here's the catch. The brain is smart. It adapts. So with repeated hits of nicotine, the brain starts to get desensitized. It downregulates receptors.
Meaning
you need more and more nicotine just to feel, normal. Not even to get that initial euphoria anymore, just to avoid feeling bad.
So you're chasing normal, not pleasure.
Precisely. It's a really powerful neurological trap. The cravings become intense, really hard to fight.
That shift is fascinating. From chasing a high to just trying to function. Okay, let's widen the lens again. The big picture. We know smoking kills.
No question about it. Smokers, on average, die younger than non-smokers. Significantly younger, often.
And that 1 in 5 statistic again.
1 in 5 deaths in the U.S. linked to smoking. And the major health problems it drastically increases the risk for. Heart disease, heart attack, stroke, lung cancer, of course, and dying from COPD.
Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. We'll get to that. Let's focus on the heart and blood vessels first. How does smoking launch this assault on the cardiovascular system?
It's multi-pronged, really. First, nicotine hits your adrenal glands.
Okay.
That stimulates them to pump out adrenaline, which immediately jacks up your blood pressure.
Instant effect.
Instant effect. Plus, both nicotine and carbon monoxide directly damage the smooth, delicate inner lining of your arteries. They injure it.
And that injury, that's like opening the door for other problems.
Exactly. Once that lining is damaged, it's easier for fatty deposits, cholesterol, other stuff to start sticking there. These deposits are called plaques.
Plaques.
They build up at these injury sites, and over time they can grow, making the arteries narrower and narrower.
Which restricts blood flow.
Severely restricts it in some cases. And that whole process, that's atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries.
Okay, so atherosclerosis is the underlying mechanism. What specific conditions does that lead to?
Well, a major one is coronary artery disease. That's when atherosclerosis narrows the arteries feeding the heart muscle itself.
So the heart doesn't get enough oxygen.
Exactly, which massively increases the risk of a heart attack.
Makes sense.
Smoking also makes your blood clot more easily. It causes platelets, the clotting cells in your blood, to get sticky and clump together.
So higher risk of blood clots forming where they shouldn't.
Definitely. Which can block arteries suddenly, leading to heart attack or stroke.
And it affects arteries elsewhere, too, not just the heart.
Oh, yes. You get peripheral vascular disease, where plaques block the big arteries in your arms and legs, can cause pain, numbness, even lead to amputation in severe cases.
Gosh.
And another one, maybe less known, is an increased risk of abdominal aortic aneurysm.
What's that exactly?
It's a dangerous bulge, a weakening in the wall of the aorta, the main artery leaving the heart as it passes through your abdomen. If that ruptures, it's often fatal.
Wow. It really drives home how widespread the damage is, doesn't it? Far beyond just the lungs people usually think of.
It really does. How many people connect smoking with, say, an aneurysm in their abdomen? Probably not enough.
Right. Okay, let's pivot to the lungs then, the immediate point of entry. How does smoke damage these really delicate structures?
Well, the main damage happens in two key areas. The airways, the bronchial tubes, and the tiny air sacs at the end, the alveoli.
Okay, so air comes down the windpipe.
Through the branching bronchial tubes, yeah. And eventually it reaches these millions of tiny alveoli. That's where the magic happens. Oxygen passes into the blood, carbon dioxide comes out.
And our airways have defenders, right? These little cleaning hairs.
Cilia.
Yes.
Yes. Tiny hair-like projections lining the bronchial tubes. Their job is to constantly beat, like microscopic brooms, sweeping mucus, dust, and trapped particles up and out of the lungs.
Keeping things clean.
Exactly. But cigarette smoke throws a wrench in the works. Instantly, it irritates that lining, causes swelling, and makes the lining produce more mucus.
Some more gunk.
More dunk. And crucially, the chemicals in the smoke actually slow down and eventually paralyze those cilia.
Oh, so the brooms stop working.
Pretty much. Or they work really poorly, so the smoke particles, the extra mucus, it all just sits there trapped in the airways.
Is that why smokers cough so much, especially in the morning?
That's a big part of it. It's called smoker's cough. While you're asleep, some of the cilia might recover a little bit, and they try desperately to clear out all the junk that built up during the day.
So you wake up coughing to expel it.
Exactly. But over time, with continued smoking, those cilia can just give up entirely. They stop working. The airways get clogged with scar tissue and thick mucus. That's chronic bronchitis. Breathing becomes really difficult.
And the lungs are more vulnerable then.
Much more vulnerable to infections, yeah. And it's not just the airways. Remember the alveoli, the air sacs.
Right, where the gas exchange happens.
Smoke damages those directly too, breaks down their delicate walls, makes it harder for oxygen to get into the blood and CO2 to get out.
So even if air gets in, the transfer doesn't work well.
Exactly. Over many years, this destruction of the alveoli leads to emphysema. The lungs lose their elasticity, air gets trapped. People with severe emphysema literally gasp for every breath.
Might need oxygen tanks.
Often, yes, just to function.
And when you put chronic bronchitis and emphysema together?
That's when we use the umbrella term COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And this is really important for listeners to grasp. COPD is gradual, it's progressive, it's irreversible, there's no cure. You just lose the ability to breathe effectively, bit by bit.
That's incredibly grim. A slow suffocation almost.
It is. It profoundly impacts quality of life.
Okay, switching gears slightly, but obviously related. Cancer. We mentioned the 40-plus carcinogens. How do they actually trigger cancer at the cellular level?
Yeah, those carcinogens, things like cyanide, formaldehyde, benzene, ammonia, among others, they do their damage right down at the DNA level.
Or genetic code.
Exactly. Normally, healthy cells have instructions in their DNA, grow, divide to make new cells when needed, and die when they're supposed to. It's a controlled process.
Right.
But the toxic chemicals in cigarette smoke can damage that DNA, so the instructions get corrupted, damaged cells might start growing and dividing uncontrollably, creating more unhealthy cells.
And they don't die when they should.
They don't die when they should, and they can invade surrounding tissues and even break off and travel through the bloodstream or lymph system to start new tumors elsewhere. That's metastasis.
So it's a fundamental breakdown of the body's own control system.
Precisely. Triggered by that DNA damage.
And lung cancer, obviously, is the big one people associate with smoking.
It's the most common cancer worldwide, yeah. Over 1 million new cases diagnosed each year, and smoking is overwhelmingly the main cause.
And this is crucial, isn't it? it's not just lung cancer.
Absolutely not. This is something everyone needs to understand. Those harmful chemicals get absorbed into your blood. They travel everywhere. So they can cause cancer in many, many other parts of the body.
Like where? Give us some examples.
Okay, so besides the lungs, cancers of the blood like leukemia and bone marrow, cancers of the mouth, the voice box or larynx, the throat, the esophagus, the tube going down to your stomach.
So the whole path the smoke takes.
And beyond. Stomach cancer, pancreatic cancer, kidney cancer, bladder cancer, even cancers of the uterus and the cervix in women.
Wow. Pancreas, kidneys, bladder. It's truly systemic.
It really illustrates how those toxins circulate in damaged cells far from the point of inhalation. It's a whole body assault.
And the damage doesn't stop at cancer, does it? What about other insidious effects, like on reproductive health?
That's another major area of concern, often overlooked. Smoking can actually cause infertility.
In both men and women?
Yes, in both. It can make it harder to conceive. And if a woman smokes during pregnancy, well, she's directly exposing her developing baby to all those toxins.
What are the risks for the baby?
Oh, the risks are significant. Increased chance of low birth weight, which carries its own set of problems. Higher risk of miscarriage, premature birth, stillbirth. Even after birth, there's a higher risk of infant death and sudden infant death syndrome. Asides.
Asides, wow.
Yeah. And even if the baby is born seemingly healthy, if the mother smokes while breastfeeding,
The nicotine gets into the milk.
it does. Nicotine passes readily into breast milk, and it can affect the baby, causing things like trouble sleeping, restlessness, or rapid heartbeat, vomiting, even diarrhea.
Gosh, it really makes you think about the impact across generations, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. These aren't just risks for the smoker, but for their children, too.
Okay, beyond reproduction, what other sort of systemic health problems does smoking contribute to?
Well, there's quite a list. Bone health is one. Smoking is linked to decreased bone density, making bones weaker.
Leading to fractures.
Especially hip fractures, yeah. Particularly a concern for older women. Oral health takes a massive hit, too.
Gum disease.
Big time. Gum disease, which often leads to tooth loss, may even require surgery. Then there's the immune system.
How does it affect that?
It can cause immune system dysfunction, basically making you less able to fight off infections and illnesses. Wound healing is often slower in smokers, too.
Takes longer to recover from injuries or surgery.
Exactly. And for men, there's a clear link between smoking and erectile dysfunction.
So really, it touches almost every aspect of health.
It's hard to find a system it doesn't negatively impact.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together. We started with that chemical cocktail and the smoke and the way nicotine hijacks the brain.
The addiction cycle.
Then we looked at the devastating assault on the heart and blood vessels, atherosclerosis, clots, aneurysms.
The cardiovascular damage.
Then the lungs under siege, the cilia shutting down, chronic bronchitis, emphysema, culminating in COPD.
Irreversible lung damage.
Then the huge topic of cancer, not just in the lungs, but that body-wide threat, mouth, throat, stomach, bladder, kidneys, so many places.
Triggered by that DNA damage.
And finally, these other insidious issues: infertility, risks in pregnancy, and for newborns, poor bone health, gum disease, weakened immunity, slower healing, erectile dysfunction.
It paints a pretty comprehensive picture of harm, doesn't it?
It really does. It hammers home that smoking isn't just one problem. It affects nearly every organ, every system.
And I think the key takeaway really is getting beyond just knowing smoking is bad. It's understanding how these chemicals work, where they do the damage. That detailed picture gives you a much more powerful perspective.
Absolutely. It's about seeing the body as this incredibly complex, interconnected system and understanding how vulnerable that balance is.
Right. How repeated small exposures can lead to such catastrophic, widespread failure.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. Just take a moment to consider that complexity, your body's amazing systems, and think about how this one habit, inhaling smoke, can set off such a devastating cascade of effects, touching almost everything.
Yeah, it's not really just about cigarettes, is it? It's a lesson in physiology, in how interconnected our health is, appreciating that balance, and how profoundly something like smoking can disrupt it. The sheer breadth of the impact is what's truly sobering.
We really hope this deep dive gives you some foods for thought, some perspective on this knowledge and what it means, both for individual health choices and how we understand public health challenges.